McManigal. I am the Director of Operations for Park Lawn Corporation, who owns Strong-Thorne Mortuary and the Daniels locations here in the Albuquerque area. I thank you for allowing me, thank you Gail for allowing me to be with you guys today and give you a brief overview of a little bit of the history of Strong-Thorne Mortuary and also, the tour of the funeral home itself. One thing that we will use synonymously, just throwing this out there, funeral home and mortuary are basically the same thing. So if you hear me say funeral home or you hear me say mortuary, they're basically the same. Strong-Thorne Mortuary is the official name of it. That is a name that has been used for a long time. Funeral homes have been a little bit more recent than mortuaries. Same like undertakers and morticians, those are older terms. Funeral directors, embalmers, those types of things are a little bit newer terms. All of them mean the same thing for the most part. There's slight differences in them all, but very rarely does it really matter which direction you go. I answer just about anything. So, as far as Strong-Thorne Mortuary goes, so it started off with the Strong brothers. They actually failed at mining in, I believe it was Leadville, Colorado, someplace in Colorado. They were coming down and they were going to El Paso. Well, when they got to what now is Albuquerque, then was very, very different than it is now. One of their oxen had gotten sick. So they had when they left Colorado, they had enough money to buy 6 oxen and a prairie schooner. So they started coming down, came down, got to here, one of the oxen got sick, and eventually died. So instead of trying to make the rest of the trip with only 5, they decided, oh, you know what, let's stay here. So they opened up a furniture business, a secondhand furniture business, and that was back in, I think, 1881. In 1882, they started to incorporate the funeral home side of things, the mortuary side of things with everything. So the Strong-Thorne, then the Strong Brothers Mortuary has been around since 1882. This is actually the second location. The first location was on the corner of Copper and 2nd Street. Not as modern as this is. This building basically, I mean, they've done a couple additions since then, but this building has been here. The plans, I think, were started to build it in the early teens to early 20s, but it is finished in the mid-1920s. So this building is nearly 100 years old. And for the most part, it's the same building as it was then. This was one of the 2 chapels. Since then, we've kind of renovated it into, obviously, a reception area, but we still use it as a second chapel when we need to. As you see, the lights above me, the ones that are making me look good, because they're cosmetic lights, that's what we use in all of the rooms that we have, whether the chapel, the state rooms, and we'll go through and we'll talk about those on the tour as well. But that's the lighting that we have in funeral homes that I wish I had in my own home. So that's one of the things that we use as for presentation and for everything else. But this is, like I said, one of the chapels. We do have another one of the chapels all the way up until, I believe it was 1988. Either the Strongs or the Thorns, or a combination of the Strong and Thorns, because they married, some of them married each other, not that way. Just one of them, not that way. But they kept the funeral home in the family. And then it was about 1988, I believe, that a company called Alderwoods, or the Lowen Group, bought out the Strong-Thorne Mortuary, and Fitzgerald and Sons, which is the Daniels Family Funeral Services on our Carlisle Boulevard, the Carlisle Chapel. So they purchased those. Then the Service Corporation International, SCI, largest corporation in the world in the funeral industry, then purchased them from them. Then Kevin Daniels purchased these 2 funeral homes from SCI, and then Signature Group, who now is Park Lawn, had purchased from Kevin Daniels. So that's kind of what happens in the funeral business. A lot of times everything is started out family owned, then it goes one way or the other, different families. Very rarely does a funeral home mortuary ever really go out of business. Most of the time it changes hands. I mean, it's one of those things that people are just dying to get in. So it's, even though they say it's a dying business, we don't usually go out of business. So, and part of that is when we do serve on the families that we serve, we also serve on a pre-arrangement basis, a pre-need basis. So people invest money into their services, say at the time that they're going through, and then when the time comes and they pass away, it's already paid for. Everything is taken care of. And so that's part of what the funeral homes and mortuaries do as well, is kind of that security for later on. And that's why funeral homes usually don't go out of business. They sell out or change hands or something like that. This funeral home is very, very large compared to a lot of the funeral homes that I have worked in over my last 16 years. I would say I've only worked in one other one that is a little bit bigger than this one, which is hard to imagine. I can honestly say up until about 6 months ago, I've been here for 3 years, that I still get lost in this building. So hopefully that doesn't happen today. If it does, come find us. And so we'll go through the different things that make up a funeral home. Arrangement offices, chapels, the little hidden doorways and back hallways and things like that. And all of it is set up on purpose. As you can tell, for the most, when we get out into the common area, you'll see doorways that are a little bit wider than normal. Well, that's because caskets have to go around it. Hallways are a little bit wider. I wish that every time somebody built a church or built a home, they would talk to us first to make sure that their hallways and doorways were wide enough, because every time somebody passes away at home, it's hit and miss if we're able to even get into the room where they pass away. So that's about it for the overview, I guess.
Let's take
Anything
a tour.
else? Yes.
By chance, are these historic chandeliers or are these reproductions made?
These are reproductions, I believe.
They're beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So I do have quite a bit of different newspaper clippings and advertisements back from the early 1900s, late 1800s. So if anybody would like to look through some of those, I do have those here. I can also make copies, so don't take my copy, please. But I can make copies for you if you'd like copies of that. All right, well, let's go. So this is something you don't see very often in funeral homes, especially going into like a chapel or a stateroom or anything like that, is stairs. Stairs are a funeral director's worst enemy. Anytime that we have to go into a room, out of a room, and we have to maneuver stairs, it's not fun. So please watch your step when you are coming through, but this is something you don't see very often. So, like I said, I've been in the funeral profession for about 16 years. I've worked in numerous different funeral homes, family-owned, corporately owned, all of that. I've only worked in one other funeral home that actually has an elevator. Most of the time, everything is one story, so it's a very large footprint. But this funeral home is actually 3 stories. So this is the main floor. The downstairs, that's where a lot of the deliveries would come, the caskets, things like that, when we would bring someone into our care from their place of death, whether it's a hospital or a nursing home or their residence themselves. We would go from the basement. Now, there's been some renovations to this building over the last nearly 100 years. One of them was the preparation room where the embalming was actually upstairs. So that's actually our conference room now. It's kind of funny, but the preparation room was upstairs. And so they would go from the basement where the downstairs the garages are and stuff like that to take people upstairs to do the embalming. Downstairs right now is basically storage. We do have a prep room down there, but we utilize what's called the centralized care center. So even though this is a funeral home, even though we have an embalming room, a preparation room, we don't do any of that preparation actually here in the building anymore.
Oh.
We have a centralized care center that takes care of all of the embalming, all of the dressing, all of the casking, all the cosmetics. We have specialized people that work there that don't work in the funeral homes. So at our funeral homes, we have funeral directors and arrangers that take care of the families that the loved ones leave behind. At our prep center, they take care of the loved ones that pass away. And then they bring them to us for the services and things like that. So even though we have a very, very, very small embalming room downstairs, probably the size of this hallway, from here to there, it's very small. Compared to what it used to be, it's not actually really used. But that's one of the state regulations in the laws. When you have a funeral home, you have to have a prep room that could be active. So we have everything in there that would be active in a preparation room. An embalming machine, chemicals, all the different instruments, a table, all of the things so if we needed to, we could. And I will say this, last year when, at the height of the pandemic and things like that, we did utilize some of our preparation rooms at our funeral homes that hadn't been used in forever. I did some embalming at our Wyoming location. I did some at our southern location. So we were able to utilize that because we had to. It was one of those things that we were just like every other funeral home in the area was overwhelmed. Hospitals were overwhelmed, so we did everything that we could in a very dignified and loving way to all of our loved ones that did pass away. This is, like I said, the only other funeral home that I have ever worked at that had an elevator was George H. Lewis and Sons in Houston, Texas. It's one of the most premier funeral homes, and that place is also large, and I got lost in there as well. So,
can you open the door? Is that one of those gated?
Yeah, it's basically a freight elevator. So there's the access from the back side. It goes upstairs and it comes back. It goes here and it goes downstairs. I don't ride in that elevator. I'm not saying it's gonna stop or get stuck. I just don't want to chance it. I'll take the stairs. and again, because how large this funeral home is, there's actually, and I'll show you, there's 2 sets of stairs to go to 2 separate parts of this basement. So the basement is so large, there's 2 sections of it. And I'll show you that as we go along. The upstairs now is mainly offices and our conference room. It just made sense to put all that up there rather than trying to have arrangement offices or selection rooms. At George Lewis, there was the upstairs was basically the arrangement rooms and the selection rooms. So everybody had to ride the elevator to make arrangements up there. But that was a very, very modern elevator, not an old freight elevator. So we'll go this way. A lot of the closed doors are closets or offices. We'll go straight this direction.
Is this here?
This is the crematory.
It's not here.
That's not here, no. So this is the main lobby area. If you come to make arrangements or if you come to a funeral service or anything like that, most of the time you're going to come in through this main entrance. The way that this building was set up was kind of in a C. It has the chapels on both ends, and then kind of a middle kind of shape of a C with a courtyard in the middle. Every spring Darnell, our location manager here, plants tulips outside. So if you want to come and see the tulips, he always plants tulips every single year. He does it himself. We have landscapers that do everything else, but he tells them no, because they probably don't do it right according to him. So he plants the tulips, which are beautiful when they bloom and everything. And we talk about we have morning huddles, and he's like, they're about to bloom, come see them. So everybody comes and sees the tulips when that happens. So again, this is kind of, when you come in, we've gotten new doors. They are not the original doors. In this area, we got to have a little bit more security than the 1920s doors. So we've got those. We're going to come this direction. We're going to go here first, and then we'll come back and around. So this is entering into our main chapel. And as you walk, you will hear the floor creak. That's because it's a very old building. That's a good indication of that. So this chapel is the one that we use for the most part for all of our services. Like I said, if we do have additional services, we will rearrange the reception room into a chapel setting with chairs and then the casket kind of where I was standing. As you can see, when it's set up, the casket would go on that, which is called the casket bier, B-I-E-R. It has wheels on it so it can roll. Just about everything that we have that a casket sits on or anything like that has wheels on it, because it's a lot of work to have to carry caskets and everything, whether empty or occupied, very heavy. So we try to do everything that we can to save our backs, but I kid you not, the funeral industry has the worst set of backs out of everything. So, when we set up for services, depending on what the family would like, setup-wise, what flowers come in, if we're using a casket or if we're having an urn and having a memorial ceremony, this changes quite often. And it can be customized to just about anything. I've done services where I've put a handmade casket from the guy's corn crib on a couple bales of hay with a saddle on top, as the casket spray, his lasso and boots. It changes because not everybody's the same. Everybody's likes are different. We've done quilts hanging everywhere. We've replaced all of the paintings and the pictures in some of our funeral homes with the ones from the person that passed away, just to make it feel more homely and to customize, and it's more of a celebration and the memory of the person that passed away rather than the drab funeral. We do have a balcony in here. It's overflow. It doesn't get used very often. It is original, but it is stable. You can go up there if you would like to go up there at some point in time. So if you look towards the back side, there's curtains over there's curtains over there, and there's curtains in the front up here. There's a doorway over there. We have hiding spots everywhere. Those hiding spots hold the things that we use for funerals. So that curtain back there has our sound system in it. That runs the sound throughout the funeral home, the screens, the everything. That curtain back there hides a little closet to put things that we need for services. Same with these two on either side. We have different equipment for different services. Like if anybody is Catholic, there's what we call Catholic equipment. It has the pray-door, the kneeler, the Catholic candles, the crucifix, because that's how we set up a service for a Catholic family. Now, any other family that would like that, we'll still set it up for them, but typically that's the way that's set up. We've got flower stands, the things there, different sizes, different shapes, because you've got to kind of cascade flowers and arrange it. So we're flower arrangers too. I know way too much about flowers. I know way too much about makeup too, but I digress. We have, typically in most funeral homes there's only one pulpit, one place where anybody speaks from. Again, that is piped through all of the speakers, whether in here or in other areas of the funeral home as well. That way, if we do have overflow and not enough seating in here, that they're in another room, they can still hear the service going on. The doors to my left and the doors behind me are two different ways of actually leaving or processing out for funerals. Sometimes we go this direction, and there's no rhyme or reason for it, and sometimes we go that direction. So a lot of times if we don't have pallbearers, we would go that direction because there's no stairs. As I said, stairs are the funeral director's worst enemy. There's stairs going out this way, but when we have pallbearers that are carrying the casket, they're usually able to go down the stairs and place the loved one into the back of the coach for going to the cemetery. We can actually, you want to go outside and come back and around? So again, just watch your step. We'll leave that open. I'm going to go open the other door and I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right, so when we leave for funerals, most of the funeral vehicles we park underneath here. Sometimes we park here if we're going to be coming out the side doors. So the back of the coach is open, and here we place in the back of the coach. Other times we park a little bit further up because when we come down the sidewalk is when we come out that other door. It just all depends on family's preference and what we're going to be doing that day. We also have plenty of room here for limousines. We have a couple of limousines. We have quite a large fleet of vehicles here that multiple coaches, because there's sometimes where we have to do services with 2 people. So we have multiple coaches, multiple limousines. We even have a funeral bus that'll seat 13 people and the casket. And so we take that to Santa Fe National quite often because families like to travel with their loved one. So not only is it a hearse, but it's also a limousine as well that seats 13 people, so like 2 limousines. We have the back parking lot down there that would line people up if we're going to be going in procession. Procession isn't required by law, but some families like to stay together with everybody that's here during the services. So we can go in police procession. We don't have to go in police procession. It's one of those things that, again, it's up to the family and their personal preference and what they would like to do. We'll go around this way, we'll go back, come back in. The back door, there's also a back door, which is our flower delivery door. Every funeral home has a flower room and a flower delivery door because we get flowers all the time. Unfortunately, they're not for us, but. So again, a lot of times what we'll do is we'll park the coach here and we'll come out the main doors and we have something that's called a church truck, or kind of like the casket beer, which has rollers on it that will guide the casket all the way down the aisle and out and then place in the back of the coach as well. So that's just another way that we can exit if we're going to a cemetery or someplace else right after. So again, and then to my right, or my left, your right, is the stairs to the balcony, and you'll have time later on if you do and would like to go through there.
Quick question. French Mortuary on University, they used to have rooms like there that the families, if a family did not want to be there interacting with
Right,
them,
the family room.
so were those ever family rooms?
I think they were at one point. I think that one was at one point in time because there's the separate entrance to it. We have come to realize that in the 16 years that I've been doing it, I think I've used the family room for its actual purpose maybe a handful of times.
So I think the whole tradition has changed where families
Right. Everybody wants to be with everybody else, you know, here in the main chapel. If you don't mind just pulling that door shut, thank you. So what we're going to do is we're going to go this direction through the hidden doorway. So please be careful going around here. So when we bring loved ones in here for services, this is how we come in. Because you never know who might be in the lobby or who's outside. So there's a lot of hidden hallways and doorways and things like that that funeral homes utilize to make caskets appear. I've even had some where the wall, there's a cutout in the wall, and it just slides open, and there it goes, and the casket's gone. So we can come back around this way. So this is just our flower room. We're going to go down the hallway. But this is just our flower room. It's the back entrance. Like I said, actually we can come in here. Pardon the flowers on the floor still. We do have services that are going on. So this is this is a delivery door for flowers. This is another back hallway. A lot of times when we have, whether back hallways or other rooms, we use them for storage purposes, which we have a few caskets that are here for storage as well. And then these devices right here on my left are the church trucks that I was talking about. Caskets are placed on them, and we can roll them anywhere they need to go. These are just other options for hanging flowers. You know, we set them up and then they kind of are on stands rather than just having them on the floor. Different flowers are for different things. This would be more of something that would go to a cemetery because of the plastic bottom. The potted plants behind you would go to the house after services rather than the cemetery. So different flowers go different directions after services are over. We'll come back this way and go down the hallway.
This almost looks like an addition because of the block.
This is the addition. So this is the flat roof portion. This whole back portion
Came after the
came after the
1925.
original, the original slate tile roof and on all of that. This was one of the additions.
I can see how you can get lost here.
Yeah. We haven't even tip of the iceberg. So this first room on the left is what we call a stateroom.
State?
A state. They lie in state.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And so this is one of those rooms that again has the hidden doorway to that back hallway that we would bring the casket in from the back side. This is one of our ceremonial caskets that we use for cremation. Again, the cosmetic lighting, the different kind of lighting to help us, you know, because when we pass away and our circulatory system isn't working and the blood doesn't bring color to us, what we do is we try to cover that up cosmetically. Cosmetic lights help aid in that. So it's funny because, well, we think it is, but when you go from a funeral home and you see your loved one in a funeral home, then you go to the really bright lights of a church, they look completely different. This is why. We have things like this that help us for appearance and presentation rather than churches with the bright halogen or bright daylight bulbs, things like that. So this is a room that we would have a visitation or a private family ID viewing. It's a much more intimate living room setting, kind of like you would have back before funeral homes in the parlor. So houses would have parlor rooms or front porches that were enclosed. And those rooms were used for what is used in this room. It's used for visitations, viewings, lying in state, basically. We'll continue down the hallway. So this is one of our arrangement offices. This is the larger of the two of the arrangement offices and where we do most of our funeral arrangements, whether it's on a at-need basis, meaning somebody has passed away, or on a pre-need basis. Nobody had a recent death like that they want to come make arrangements right now, right? Because if he did, I'd have to give you a general price list before you walked into this room. One of the rules that we're governed by is if you walk into a room and you've had a death in your family and you come to make arrangements and there are prices, because there are, you have to be handed a general price list before entering the room. And so that's just one of the things that we have to do because we are a very regulated profession. As you see, there's a lot of different types of merchandise in here. Everything in here can be used for funeral services, burial, cremation, anything like that. The caskets that are on the sides and behind me are primarily used for burial. Now, that doesn't mean they can't be used for cremation. The wood caskets can be used for cremation. We don't allow the metal ones, they take a lot longer to cremate. The ones that are over here are actually specific for cremation and constructed differently than the ones that are on the sides here because they are constructed just for cremation. So there's a lot less metal inside of them. It's not as dense or thick wood. A lot of it is cardboard or fiberboard, that type of thing. And then even behind Gail, there's different types of personalization. Those show what are called our Legacy Touch collection, which we would take a fingerprint, it's a biometric scan, and they can make keepsake jewelry out of that. Some of that can hold set little portion of cremated remains, some of it doesn't. So that can be used whether you are cremating your loved one or burying your loved one. The little white thing below is just a depiction of an outer burial container, which a casket would go inside and then underground out at the cemetery. And then on that entire back wall are different urns. Now the different sizes of the urns, the large urn is for a full set of cremated remains. The small urn are if you would like to share a portion of the cremated remains with other family members, their keepsakes. Those small urns can also be used when somebody is being buried by taking some of the flowers and placing them in there as a keepsake, as a remembrance. So those can also be used, even though everybody thinks it's just for cremation, they can also be used for that. You can take a little bit of the dirt from the grave that you bury your loved one in, place it in one of those keepsakes, and then you have a keepsake at home. We've got stationery packages, the register book where people sign in, all of that type of thing. But basically everything in here can be used on services. And even with like the flag case that's there, that's a flag case, a shadow box, and an urn. The bottom part of that is actually an urn that would hold the cremated remains. It looks like it's just a pedestal, it's actually an urn. That's about everything in here unless you have questions. Yes?
I have a question. Do you get many homemade caskets, either for burial or for cremation these days?
I've gotten 2.
All right.
And one was, like I explained earlier, his name was Tudor Haynes, that passed away. And one of the guys in the small town was Anahuac, Texas, about 1,200 people, alligator capital of Texas. And when he was going through, he asked the guy to make his casket for him. And he used like I said, he used the wood from his corn crib. And so he had it in storage. That was one of 2 times that I've ever used a homemade casket. I've had people call and ask, dimensions and size and everything like that. But very rarely do we ever have somebody make their own casket. Now, they will purchase a casket from us, take it home, paint it, detail it, sign it, just about anything you can think of, and then bring it back to us for the service. We have actually one over at one of our locations that I think they were supposed to bring it back earlier in the week, but I think they finally brought it back yesterday. So for service, I think it was last night. So we have families do that all the time, especially when it's somebody that is younger. It's an accident, or I've had people take urns and that or custom car people, and the urns come out awesome. I mean, the ones that we get, some of them are pretty cool, but the homemade ones, those are pretty cool. But yeah, so to answer your question, not very often.
Can you purchase a casket from someone else and
Mhm.
would you guys allow the family to use
Yep.
that?
Yep. So when that first started coming out with casket companies, there were some funeral homes that wouldn't allow it. But by law, we have to. So we actually have to be able to accept it. Now, when that happens, it's not, I mean, there's no difference on our end. It's just what happens is we have them come here after the casket gets delivered, so that way when we uncrate it, that type of thing, if there's any damage to it, they see that it happened before it got to us rather than, with us, because if somebody purchases a casket that's not from us, anything that is wrong with it, unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. But if we had dents and dings in a casket that was one that we got from our vendors, then we replace them. This is one doorway to one area of the basement. Going through that doorway is another doorway, or another staircase to another area of the basement. The open doors right there is just a smaller arrangement room, just like this one. And then we've got some, I don't know how original it is, but it is one of the original benches from the chapel, from the original Strong-Thorne Mortuary, and also a lot of the pictures. And as you can see, the top left picture, the chapel that we were just in looks almost the same as the picture that is there. It shows the furniture making, the casket making, Mr. Strong, and just different things. This is the old building that was on the corner of Copper and 2nd Street. So that's what that one looked like. Yeah. And I think that's basically everything. We're back almost full circle. There's another hallway we could have made it to there.
So there's a picture of a casket selection room that's kind of gone out of vogue.
Right. So for the most part, as you saw 2 full-size caskets and a lot of cuts. A lot of times even that is going away to virtual. There's a TV in there and we can do virtual selection, which actually to me is better because on most of those caskets there's customization, personalization, different corners, different cap panels, sometimes different interiors even. And with it digitally, we can drag and place those different corners and different cap panels onto those caskets so you can see it before you even select it. Not only can you see it, but you can email it to the family members that aren't sitting in the arrangement office with you and ask, hey, what do you think of this one? What do you think of this one? We can do all of that from a digital platform rather than having a room the size, which one of the basements, it used to be the selection room, that's ginormous, with as many caskets as we can fit in there and having selections from there. By being able to do half cuts, end cuts, quarter cuts, things like that of those caskets that are in there, we can show more caskets so you can get a better idea of what they actually look like in person. But like I said, the digital side of things, where everything is moving, helps us with selections, and it gives families a lot more options in when they're selecting something, whether an urn, casket, out of barrel container, or cremation container itself.
Thank you to these companies and organizations that make the Before I Die New Mexico Festival possible. A good goodbye. Gail Rubin puts the fun in funeral planning. Compassion and choices, improving care, expanding options, and empowering everyone to chart their end-of-life journey. Daniel's Family Funerals and Cremations, Fairview Memorial Park, Gabaldon Mortuary, Sandia Memory Gardens, and Vista Verde Memorial Park, all in the Albuquerque area. Estate Pros, offering professional dispersal of personal possessions due to a move, illness, or death. The Final Exit Network, educating about and defending the right to choose at end of life. French Funerals and Cremations and Sunset Memorial Park in Albuquerque. Gathering Us, providing in-person and virtual memorial services and online memorial pages. Keeper, providing hybrid and virtual memorial services and keeping memories alive with online tributes to preserve, celebrate, and share life legacies. Morris Hall, estate planning attorneys in New Mexico and Arizona. Remembering a Life, your guide to honoring a life well lived, from planning a tribute to mourning a loved one. And Retirement Extender, investment management services with a personalized strategy recommendation based on your needs and objectives.